Welcome to The Deep Dive, the show built around your source stack articles, notes, and research, where we extract the essential, often surprising nuggets of knowledge to give you a shortcut to being truly well-informed.
And today, we are tackling one of history's, well, one of its greatest misunderstandings, Cleopatra VII Thea Philopator.
Right.
We are trying to move beyond the asp, the golden barge, and all those lazy labels of seductress or exotic queen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Our whole mission today, I think, is to understand the final great ruler of the Hellenistic world as a genuine political powerhouse.
Yes.
Because when we look at the primary sources, and I mean, this is crucial, when we apply critical thinking to the Roman bias in those sources, we find someone totally different.
You really do. You find not a figure ruled by emotion, but a devastatingly shrewd monarch, a brilliant diplomat and a strategist fighting this brutal, lonely battle against Rome.
And the central irony, the thing that just blows up the popular myth right away, is her relationships.
Exactly. This woman who has this reputation, as a great seductress, had only two known intimate partners.
Only two, and they were Julius Caesar and Mark Antony.
Right. And when you pause and think about who those two men actually were,
the two most powerful, decisive figures in the collapsing Roman world.
It just stops being a story about romance, doesn't it? It becomes this very clear account of dynastic survival.
These were calculated, high-stakes alliances. I mean, it was the only means she had to secure the future of the Ptolemaic dynasty.
Precisely. And if you need any more proof that her concerns were governmental and diplomatic, you just have to look at her command of languages. It's astounding.
Her family had ruled Egypt for, what, 300 years?
300 years. And yet she was the only Ptolemaic ruler we know of who even bothered to learn the native Egyptian language.
Just think about the statement that makes. It was a centuries-long tradition for the Ptolemies to stay. Aloof, right?
Yeah.
Linguistically and culturally.
Completely. They spoke only Koine Greek.
But Cleopatra realized that to be a genuine pharaoh, not just some Greek monarch sitting in Alexandria, she had to communicate directly with her subjects, with the ancient priesthood.
And she didn't stop there. Her native language was Koine Greek, which was the common language of the Hellenistic world. But on top of that, she learned Egyptian, she learned Latin.
And according to Plutarch, it was even more than that.
Oh, yeah. Plutarch suggests up to 7 other languages fluently: Ethiopian, Hebrew, or Aramaic, Arabic, Syrian, Median, and Parthian.
That is just a staggering linguistic repertoire. And it's not intellectual curiosity, is it?
No. That is diplomatic necessity.
Right. She could negotiate treaties, receive ambassadors, manage trade, all without a translator for nearly every nation bordering Egypt.
Functionally, she was a multinational CEO of a command economy, a true chief executive and an intellectual in her own right.
And that's the angle we're really digging into today. Let's unpack the strategic thinking that underpinned her monumental yet very short reign.
Okay, so to really understand Cleopatra, we first have to locate her lineage. We are talking about the Hellenistic period, a time totally defined by the legacy of Alexander the Great. So who were the Ptolemies?
They were Macedonian Greeks, right? Foreign conquerors.
Exactly. They inherited Egypt after Alexander's death in 323 BC. Her direct ancestor was Ptolemy XIII, one of Alexander the Great's most trusted generals, who just carved out his own kingdom in Egypt.
And that's the key. For 3 centuries, they saw themselves as Greek rulers in a Greek capital.
And that capital was Alexandria. It was meant to be this, lighthouse of Greek culture, learning, and trade built right at the mouth of the Nile.
So they governed from there, and they spoke exclusively in Koine Greek.
Right. Koine Greek was the lingua franca, the language of the bureaucracy, the military, the court. The idea of a Ptolemy-speaking Egyptian, it would have been seen as almost vulgar by her ancestors.
It was a political concession they just wouldn't make.
They wouldn't. So when Cleopatra VII chooses to master the Egyptian tongue, she was doing something politically and culturally revolutionary. She was signaling to the vast majority of her population and the very powerful Egyptian priesthood that she was going to fuse her Macedonian right to rule with the ancient tradition of the pharaoh.
She had to be the chief religious authority for both sets of gods, Greek and Egyptian, and language was the bridge.
But while she was trying to unify her culture internally, the external pressures were just immense. By the time she came to the throne, the Ptolemaic kingdom was essentially a client state of Rome.
A client state under the, let's say, predatory eye of Rome.
Predatory is a good word for it. We need to contextualize just how deeply Rome was embedded. Her grandfather, Ptolemy X, and especially her father, Ptolemy XII Auletes, had relied on Roman political and military backing just to hold on to their thrones.
And the sources say Rome actually had legal grounds to seize Egypt outright, didn't they? Because of some earlier wills left by her ancestors.
They did, but, rather than deal with the administrative nightmare of absorbing such a wealthy and populous country, Rome opted for a more profitable system.
Which was?
They just propped up compliant, indebted rulers. It was a highly effective form of geopolitical control.
And this brings us to the crushing inheritance she received. Ptolemy XII, her father. He was known as the flute player, Auletes.
Right, partly for his patronage of Dionysian arts, but mostly because he was so desperate to stay in power that he completely bankrupted the kingdom, paying off Romans.
Romans like Caesar and Pompey.
Exactly, and that is the crucial detail. Cleopatra inherited a massive debt, something like 17.5 million drachmas.
Wow. And what does that mean in real terms?
It was several years' worth of the entire royal revenue. This wasn't standard national debt, this was protection money. She inherited a kingdom whose foreign policy was literally shackled by Roman IOUs.
So every move she made had to be calculated to service that debt and keep the legions from coming to collect on the collateral.
And the collateral was Egypt itself.
We see the brutal reality of Rome's power right away. In 58 BC, Rome just annexes Cyprus, which was ruled by her uncle, Ptolemy of Cyprus.
And rather than face exile and humiliation, he chose suicide.
And how did her father, Ptolemy XII, respond to Rome, stealing a huge part of the family domain and forcing his own brother's suicide?
He maintained public silence.
Yeah.
Nothing.
And that silence, combined with the crushing taxes he needed to pay off his Roman debts, it enraged the Egyptian populace.
It led directly to his exile to Rome. And the sources suggest that the young Cleopatra, only about 11 at the time, might have gone with him.
Imagine that as a political education. Seeing your father, a king, reduced to a desperate supplicant, bribing senators in the heart of the enemy's city.
She saw the cost of failure firsthand, and it deeply informed her approach to power. So when Ptolemy XII finally died, shortly before March of 51 BC, she didn't hesitate for a second.
She was briefly regent, but the official documents almost immediately list her as the sole ruler.
Right out of the gate, she rejects the nominal sibling marriage with her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII. She breaks with this long-standing Ptolemaic tradition.
She consolidates power, and then she makes this really important move. She performs an official voyage to Hermonthis to install a sacred Buches bull,
which confirmed her role as a religious authority to the native Egyptians. It was her first major political move, a clear signal to the Egyptian people.
But the problems were just immediate and existential. She's facing a severe famine.
Caused by drought and low flooding of the Nile, the absolute lifeblood of Egypt. A ruler's legitimacy was often tied to the bounty of the land, so failing to handle this was incredibly dangerous for her.
And compounding that, you have internal violence in Alexandria. You've got the Gabiniani,
the remnants of a Roman garrison left behind by a general named Aulus Gabinius. They were now just unemployed, undisciplined mercenaries, violent, constantly committing crimes, and completely undermining stability in the capital.
So she's stuck between a famine on one hand and a legion of violent Roman soldiers she can't control on the other.
And she tries to assert control. She even sends the murderers of 2 sons of the Roman governor of Syria to him for punishment. But he refuses.
He refuses.
Says their fate is the Senate's prerogative. It was a clear sign that Rome, not Cleopatra, held the ultimate authority, even over soldiers on our own soil.
And this internal weakness, of course, gets exploited by a rival cabal that forms around her younger brother, Ptolemy III.
Right. This group included the powerful eunuch Pothinos, who was the regent, General Achilles, who commanded the army, and a rhetorician named Theodotus, the boy's tutor.
And they eventually gained the upper hand.
They did. They recognized that Cleopatra was too strong, too independent for their own ambitions. By the spring of 48 BC, they forced her to flee Alexandria.
She takes her younger sister, Arsinoe IV, and retreats to Roman Syria to start raising a mercenary army.
So this civil war turns Egypt into a guaranteed flashpoint, just as the major Roman civil war between Caesar and Pompey is about to come to a head.
The stage is now set for a massive clash.
Yeah.
In August of 48 BC, Julius Caesar defeats Pompey at the Battle of Pharsalus in Greece.
And Pompey, who had a long-standing political relationship with Cleopatra's father, naturally flees to Egypt seeking refuge.
This is the moment when the Ptolemaic court makes its great, tragic miscalculation.
A huge one. Ptolemy III's advisors, Pothinos in particular, they feared that allowing Pompey to stay would just drag them into a long conflict with Caesar on Egyptian soil. They wanted to look compliant.
So on September 28th, 48 BC, they ambush and kill Pompey near Pelusium, mutilate his body.
And send his head to Caesar as this misguided show of allegiance. They thought they were solving their Roman problem by just siding with the winner.
But Caesar arrives in Alexandria a few days later, expecting to pursue his great rival, and is instead presented with Pompey's head and signet ring.
And the shock, according to all the sources, was genuine. Caesar wept, not out of friendship, they were enemies, but out of respect for Roman pietas, for military decorum. It was a barbaric murder, unworthy of a great Roman general.
So he demands the warring siblings reconcile, and he immediately occupies the royal palace.
And this political blunder just opens the door wide for Cleopatra. She knows her position is militarily hopeless, so she decides she needs to approach Caesar directly and personally.
And the accounts of this meeting are just legendary, aren't they? And they contradict each other, which tells you a lot about the propaganda already.
It does. Cassius Dio says she arrived dressed attractively and used her intellectual wit and charm to win him over.
And then you have Plutarch's account, the really theatrical one.
The stuff of legend. That she had herself smuggled into the palace, wrapped up and bound inside a bed sack or a roll of bedding, and carried past the guards.
Whatever the delivery method, the result was the same. An immediate and powerful political alliance.
Oh, yes. Ptolemy III was outraged when he found out his sister was consorting directly with Caesar in the palace. He incites a riot, but Caesar manages to calm the crowd.
And then Caesar just exercises his absolute authority. He reveals the written will of their father, Ptolemy XII, naming them both as joint rulers.
And to try and stabilize things, he offers Cyprus back to the other siblings, Arsinoe I and Ptolemy I.
But the cabal around Ptolemy XIII, led by Pothinos, they just see weakness.
They think they can easily defeat Caesar's small force. He only had about 4,000 men, with their Egyptian army of 20,000, which included the Gabiniani.
So Pothinos rejects the settlement.
And this ignites the siege of Alexandria, which lasts from late 48 all the way into 47 BC.
It's an incredible spectacle. Cleopatra and Caesar are literally trapped together inside the royal palace, besieged by her brother's army.
And it gets desperate. Her exiled sister, Arsinoe IV, actually escapes captivity, joins the revolt, and is proclaimed queen by the rebels.
Wow.
The siege only ends when Caesar's much-needed reinforcements finally arrive. The revolt collapses. Pothinos is executed, and Ptolemy XIII drowns trying to escape the battle.
So with her internal rivals eliminated and Arsinoe IV captured, Cleopatra is firmly installed as Rome's indispensable client queen.
Caesar appoints her youngest brother, the 12-year-old Ptolemy IV, as her co-ruler in a nominal sibling marriage, though her private relationship with Caesar was now an open secret.
And this relationship led to the birth of her son, Ptolemaic V, whom she immediately and officially names Caesarion Little Caesar in 47 BC.
But this is where the Roman political reality just slams into things. Caesar was married to a Roman noblewoman, Calpurnia.
And so he remains publicly silent about the child's parentage. To acknowledge a non-Roman foreign heir would have been a political dynamite in Rome.
It would have confirmed all the suspicions that he had monarchical ambitions.
But Cleopatra, ever the strategist, made repeated official declarations, naming Caesar as the father.
This wasn't a sentimental gesture. It was a long-term strategy, establishing a blood tie to Rome's most powerful man, which would give her dynasty a crucial claim years later.
It seems their time together wasn't all war and succession, though. The sources mention this grand sightseeing cruise up the Nile.
The sheer scale is almost unbelievable. They allegedly sailed on the huge royal barge, the Thalamagos. And this wasn't just a ship, it was a floating palace.
How big are we talking?
Estimated to be 300 feet long, nearly the length of a modern football field, complete with gardens, shrines, massive dining rooms.
And the cruise itself reflected Caesar's known fascination with geography.
Some historians think he might have been trying to find the source of the Nile, only turning back before reaching Ethiopia. It was this merger of political alliance, intellectual curiosity, and just opulent display.
Then, after the cruise, Cleopatra visits Rome between 46 and 44 BC, staying at Caesar's villa.
This confirmed her status as friend and ally of the Roman people. But her presence in Rome triggered a fierce reaction among the traditionalists.
And this is where we see Caesar really push the boundaries of Roman tolerance. He has a golden statue of Cleopatra placed in the Temple of Venus Genetrix in his new form.
I mean, think about the audacity of that move. A gilded statue of a living foreign queen placed next to Venus, the mythical mother of the Romans and the Julian family line.
It was deeply provocative. It subtly associated Cleopatra, and through her, the powerful Egyptian goddess Isis, with the Roman foundational deity. It legitimized her power to the highest degree.
And the traditional Roman aristocracy was horrified. We know Senator Cicero, who met her during this visit, found her incredibly arrogant.
He complained in a letter that her visit was a personal insult to the Senate. The public hostility to the idea of kings and queens was palpable.
And that hostility climaxed just before Caesar's assassination. At the Lupercalia festival, Mark Antony stages this calculated test. He publicly offers Caesar a royal diadem,
A symbol of kingship.
Caesar dramatically refuses it, but the attempt itself showed that the fear of him becoming a king, linked to his association with this queen of kings, Cleopatra, was very real and driving the political climate.
So when Caesar is assassinated on the Ides of March in 44 BC, Cleopatra stays in Rome for a month, desperately hoping her son Caesarion might be recognized as his legitimate heir,
But Caesar's will named his grandnephew Octavian.
which forces her to return to Egypt. And shortly after she gets back, her co-ruler, the 12-year-old Ptolemy IV, dies.
And the sources strongly suggest he was poisoned by Cleopatra.
So having lost her powerful Roman protector, she immediately turns inward to consolidate her only remaining asset, her throne and her son.
Exactly. The death of Ptolemy IV cleared the way for Caesarion to officially become her co-ruler as Ptolemy IV. She needed a new Roman champion, and destiny was about to deliver him.
Following Caesar's death, Rome falls under the control of the Second Triumvirate, Octavian, Mark Antony, and Lepidus.
And Cleopatra strategically throws her loyalty to the triumvirate, though her first attempts to send military aid were thwarted by some logistical mishaps.
So after Antony crushes Caesar's assassins at Philippi in 42 BC, the Roman world is basically divided. And Antony gets the wealthy, strategically vital East.
Right. And in the summer of 41 BC, Antony summons Cleopatra to Tarsos in Cilicia, which is modern Turkey.
A critical political meeting. She needed to account for her kingdom's actions, and Antony needed secure funds and supplies for his upcoming campaign against the Parthian Empire.
Rome's great eastern rival.
And here we had the second great theatrical entrance, the one that cemented her mythic image.
She sails up the Kidnos River to Tarsos, not just as a queen, but as a goddess.
Aboard the colossal Ptolemaic again.
Yes, its sails dyed a distinctive royal purple adorned with silver and gold, powered by oarsmen dressed as Cupid figures. And Cleopatra herself was dressed as Isis, a goddess of nurturing, fertility, and rebirth, or maybe as Aphrodite, the goddess of love.
And she's meeting Antony, who frequently associated himself with the god Dionysus.
This was political theater of the absolutely highest order. It was designed to appeal directly to Antony's Hellenistic sensibilities. It wasn't just a display of wealth, it was a deliberate pairing of divine authority.
So she was presenting herself as a ready-made, powerful partner, capable of funding and legitimizing his Eastern ambitions.
And politically, it worked. She hosted these lavish banquets on the ship for 2 nights running, secured Antony's loyalty, and she got a crucial political concession.
Which was?
The execution of her exiled sister, Arsinoe IV, who was still living at the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus and remained a major rival to her throne.
Her rationale was flawless then. Antony was now the most dominant figure in the East. He was the only Roman with the authority to guarantee Egypt's security and, critically, restore former Ptolemaic territories seized by Rome.
And this strategic partnership immediately paid dynastic dividends. She bore him 3 children, the twins, Alexander Helios, meaning sun, and Cleopatra Selene II, meaning moon, and later a son named Ptolemy Philadelphus.
The names themselves were propaganda, weren't they? Reflecting this new Alexandrian era.
Absolutely. Alexander Helios, named for Alexander the Great, and the cosmic dualism of sun and moon signaled that their children were meant to rule a vast, unified territory. It explicitly hinted at Antony succeeding where Caesar had failed, conquering the Parthians.
And the territorial gains began in earnest. Antony summons her to Antioch in 37 BC to discuss the Parthian War.
And in return for her indispensable financial support and loyalty, he gifted her substantial former Ptolemaic lands.
So this wasn't charity. This was nation-building through deal-making.
She gained vast, wealthy lands, including most of Phoenicia, modern Lebanon, Col Syria, and territories in Crete and Cyrene.
She even acquired the prized area around Jericho in Judea.
famous for its bomb and date palms, which she promptly leased back to Herod, the new client king of Judea. These reacquisitions enriched her kingdom immensely. She was so confident in this new era that she double-dated her coinage in 36 BC just to mark the inauguration of these gains.
This partnership reaches its absolute apex and arguably signs its own death warrant with the spectacular event known as the Donations of Alexandria in 34 BC.
Antony had just returned victorious from Armenia, capturing King Artavasdes II, and in a deliberate, profound insult to Roman tradition, instead of holding a triumph in Rome.
He staged the triumph in Alexandria.
The symbolism was explosive. Cleopatra was seated on a massive golden throne above a silver dais in the gymnasium, dressed as the goddess Isis. Antony presented the captured Armenian king to her,
essentially declaring her the ultimate recipient of the spoils of war. That flies in the face of all Roman political norms. Only the Senate could award a triumph, and only in Rome.
And the declaration that followed was even more revolutionary. Antony formally declared Cleopatra Queen of Kings and Caesarion King of Kings.
And then he carves up the eastern territories among their children.
Alexander Helios was declared king of Armenia, Media, and Parthia lands. Antony hadn't even conquered yet. Ptolemy Philadelphus got Syria and Cilicia, and Cleopatra Selene II was given Crete and Cyrene.
This was just an undisguised blueprint for dismantling the Roman Republic's control over the East and putting a Hellenistic dynasty at the heart of the region.
He sent a detailed report back to Rome requesting ratification, but the political firestorm was immediate. His own supporters in the Senate had to censor the report from public view because of the backlash.
And this gave Octavian the opening he desperately needed.
The propaganda war just exploded, and it is this moment that forever warped Cleopatra's image.
Octavian seized on Antony's actions, marrying a foreign queen, giving away Roman territory, to portray Antony not as a co-ruler, but as a weak man.
A slave to his oriental queen, neglecting his virtuous Roman wife, Octavia, who was Octavian's own sister.
The gossip machine was weaponized. Cleopatra was branded a sorceress who used drugs and witchcraft to brainwash Antony.
She was likened to Homer's Helen of Troy, a destructive foreign influence aiming to destroy Roman civilization from within.
And the stories just got more and more outrageous. The most famous example, probably fabricated later by Pliny the Elder, was the story about the pearl.
Right, that she dissolved a massive pearl, reportedly worth millions, in vinegar simply to win a dinner party bet, all to demonstrate her reckless foreign extravagance and moral corruption.
These were pure, targeted smear campaigns, designed to appeal to the average Roman's fear of Eastern excess and the erosion of Roman values.
The goal was simple: turn Antony, a powerful Roman citizen, into a foreign enemy by association.
The final decisive move was when Octavian unlawfully seized Antony's will from the custody of the Vestal virgins in Rome.
He publicly revealed the contents, claiming Antony wished to be buried next to Cleopatra in Egypt and planned to make Alexandria the new capital of the Roman Republic.
And this was Octavian's perfect casus belli, his justification for war.
He framed it not as a civil war against a fellow Roman, but as a defense of Rome itself against a foreign threat. Critically, in 32 BC, Rome officially declared war on Cleopatra, not on Antony,
allowing Octavian to claim she was restoring republican integrity.
Before we move to the final act, there's a stunning piece of physical evidence that survives from this period. It offers this direct human glimpse of Cleopatra as a functioning administrator.
What is it?
It's a papyrus document from February 33 BC, granting a tax exemption to a Roman living in Egypt. The official text was written by a scribe, but at the very bottom, in a different hand, is the Greek word xanthos,
Which means,
make it happen or so be it.
and this is believed to be her actual signature.
It is widely believed to be Cleopatra's own autograph, confirming the grant. And what's absolutely fascinating is that the word contains a unique spelling error, an extra Greek letter,
A typo.
a small human error, and it tells us two things simultaneously. First, that she was hands-on personally reviewing and signing decrees, underscoring her role as an active monarch.
And second,
It gives a fleeting glimpse of the private person. The fact that even a polyglot queen might make a small scribal error in the middle of a massive administrative crisis, it pulls her out of the realm of myth and places her firmly back in the world of the political executive.
so the collision finally arrives at the Battle of Actium in 31 BC, and the sources suggest a pretty significant strategic disagreement between them before the battle even began.
Right. Cleopatra prioritized the defense of Egypt. Antony, on the other hand, wanted to launch a direct, maybe even suicidal, attack on Italy.
They eventually set up headquarters in Greece, where the two fleets met.
And Antony and Cleopatra commanded a numerically larger fleet, but there were major quality concerns. Octavian's fleet, led by the brilliant general Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa, was smaller, but highly professional and trained.
Antony's crews were often just drawn from merchant vessels, less disciplined, poorly provisioned.
During the battle on September 2, 31 BC, Cleopatra commanded 60 ships at the rear of the main formation. She was flying the distinctive purple sails of her flagship, the Antonius.
And her ships carried sails, which was unconventional for a battle fleet.
But essential for a pursuit, or critically, a strategic withdrawal.
And that's what happened. Midway through the fighting, Cleopatra initiates this swift, calculated retreat through a gap in the fighting, breaking out and heading for the Peloponnese.
The goal was to safeguard her royal assets and defend Egypt, rather than risk everything on a pitched battle so far from home.
Antony, seeing his primary logistical and financial source retreating, immediately followed her, boarding her flagship.
And this moment was politically devastating. Roman writers like Plutarch later seized on it, branding the move as cowardly desertion, proving Antony was a slave to his foreign queen.
But the immediate result was just catastrophic for their side. Without their commanders, the remaining forces defected en masse to Octavian.
And Actium was a decisive defeat that broke the military power of the opposition.
The long retreat back to Egypt must have been agonizing. Knowing Octavian would invade, Cleopatra developed a final, desperate survival strategy.
She planned to flee completely, escaping Roman control by seeking refuge in a foreign port, maybe India or the powerful Kushite Nubian kingdom to the south.
And to achieve this, she started having her remaining fleet dragged overland from the Mediterranean across the Suez Isthmus to the Red Sea, preparing for a long voyage.
This plan was tragically and ruthlessly thwarted by one of her neighbors. Milicus I, the Nabatean king who had lost territory to Cleopatra under Antony's deals, acted on advice from Octavian's governor of Syria.
And he burned her fleet.
Burned her fleet near the Red Sea. Her last viable escape route was gone.
So with no option but to stay in Egypt and either negotiate or die, the sources hint at this terrifying psychological turn. It was rumored she began testing the strengths of various poisons on prisoners and servants.
That detail is so chilling because it speaks to a profound dedication to Ptolemaic royal honor. She wasn't trying to find a way to murder others. She was meticulously researching suicide to find the quickest and least painful method.
She was determined to deny Octavian the spectacle of her capture.
Exactly. As Octavian advanced into Egypt in the spring of 30 BC, Antony's situation just utterly collapsed. His navy defected, then his cavalry.
So Cleopatra hid herself in her tomb or mausoleum, which was already under construction, and sent a false message that she had committed suicide.
In a state of despair, Antony stabbed himself but wasn't killed immediately. He was brought up, dying, to Cleopatra in her mausoleum, where he eventually died in her arms at age 53.
And despite her efforts to be locked away, Cleopatra was captured.
By Octavian's companion, Proculius, who used a ladder to scale the tomb and detain her. He was under explicit orders to prevent her from dying. Octavian needed her and her treasures.
So when she finally met Octavian, the exchange, even filtered through Roman chroniclers, was stark.
She knew exactly what awaited her, and she delivered one of her few recorded direct statements. I will not be led in a triumph.
She was determined to avoid the fate of her sister, Arsinoe IV, who had been paraded in Caesar's triumph.
Her death followed soon after, on August 12, 30 BC, at age 39. Octavian was reportedly furious that she had foiled his plans for a public humiliation, but he had her buried next to Antony with full royal honors.
The cause of death, though, remains shrouded in mystery, thanks largely to the sheer volume of Roman propaganda about her demise.
The popular story, of course, is the bite of an asp or an Egyptian cobra.
Yet the most reliable ancient sources point to alternative methods. The snake itself was reportedly never found.
Exactly. Ancient historians offered different theories. Plutarch mentioned a sharp scratching implement, Dio suggested injection with a needle, and Strabo suggested an ointment.
The presence of tiny puncture wounds on her arm really lends credence to the idea of a highly refined, fast-acting poison delivered via a needle or a scratching instrument.
It suggests meticulous planning.
But the propaganda won the day. Poets like Horace and Virgil immediately started circulating stories about multiple serpents biting her.
And that dramatic imagery was just sensationalist and served Octavian's narrative perfectly.
Octavian capitalized fully on this version of the story. He commissioned a painting of her being bitten by a snake, which he famously paraded in her place during his Roman triumph.
He turned the method of her death into a symbol of the dangerous, exotic nature of the enemy he had defeated.
And then there's the final, brutal coda to the story, the fate of her son, Caesarion.
He was sent away to Upper Egypt for safety, but lured back under false pretense by Octavian's agents.
And he was executed just 18 days after his mother's death. The rationale was pure, ruthless pragmatism delivered by the philosopher Arius Didymus.
It is not good to have too many Caesars.
Caesarion represented the blood link to Julius Caesar, a living, breathing symbol of an alternative dynastic claim and a potential rallying point for anyone disaffected with Octavian's rule.
By eliminating the teenager, Octavian didn't just end a life, he erased an entire branch of political possibility.
So with Caesarion dead, Octavian established Egypt as a Roman province under his own personal control, treating it as a vast private estate.
And this event marked the definitive end of the Hellenistic period that had begun 3 centuries earlier with Alexander the Great.
So when we look at Cleopatra's full reign, we have to strip away the Roman-manufactured melodrama and appreciate her role as a highly effective, absolute monarch.
She was the chief executive of a sophisticated, complex state. Her involvement in government was absolute. She ruled as both the monarch and the chief religious authority, skillfully integrating ceremonies for Egyptian and Greek deities to ensure her legitimacy.
And think back to the early crises we discussed. That famine from the low Nile floods. A frivolous ruler would have let her people starve.
But Cleopatra immediately ordered the royal granaries to distribute food to the starving populace. This wasn't charity. It was strategic statecraft designed to maintain order and secure her political authority.
And her kingdom relied on this highly centralized command economy, a system she managed personally.
The government rigidly imposed price controls, tariffs, and maintained state monopolies for lucrative goods, just ensuring the state extracted maximum revenue.
They even had laws forcing farmers to stay in their villages during planting and harvesting seasons to guarantee the harvest.
Right. And despite that massive inherited debt that required her to debase her coinage, mixing less precious metal in with the silver, she stabilized the economy enough to fund Mark Antony's colossal military campaigns. That's proof of her administrative competence.
What happened to the next generation then? The children of Antony.
Her 3 surviving children, Selene II, Helios, and Philadelphus, were shipped to Rome and remarkably raised by Octavian's sister, Octavia, their stepmother.
But Octavian made sure they served their propaganda purpose first.
Oh, yes. Cleopatra, Selene II, and Alexander Helios were displayed in Octavian's massive Roman triumph in 29 BC, serving as living symbols of the foreign monarchy he had defeated.
After that spectacle, the fates of the 2 boys, Alexander Helios and Ptolemy Philadelphus, are unknown.
They likely just faded into obscurity.
But Cleopatra Selene II, the Moon, had an incredible fate.
She did. Octavian married her to Juba II, a client ruler who was the son of a king Julius Caesar had defeated. They were installed as the rulers of Mauritania in North Africa.
And Selene established a vibrant Hellenistic Greek court there, reviving the intellectual traditions of Alexandria. She named her son Ptolemy in honor of her fallen dynasty.
And this Ptolemy of Mauritania was the last known monarch of the Ptolemaic line. He was executed by the mad emperor Caligula in 40 AD, bringing the 300-year dynasty to a final, tragic close.
It's important to remember that everything we know about Cleopatra is filtered through this heavy Roman lens. Only about 50 ancient works even mention her, and almost all the detailed accounts rely on sources written by her enemies or their descendants.
Roman historiography, including the writings of Cicero, who loathed her personally, and the poets Virgil and Horace, absolutely cemented the negative image. The destructive foreign queen who nearly ruined Rome's favorite son, Antony.
This was not objective history, it was state-sponsored slander.
Right. And the most detailed surviving narrative, Plutarch's Life of Antonius, was written a century later. What gives it weight, though, is that Plutarch relied on crucial primary sources, including her personal physician, Olympos, and Antony's confidant, Quintus Dellius. So we get these little windows past the propaganda.
We also gain insight from the physical evidence, especially her coins. She was the first foreign queen to have her image on Roman currency, and the first living person to have a gilded statue next to a deity in a Roman temple.
Venus Genetrix, thanks to Caesar.
Right. And let's address the elephant in the room. Her famous beauty. The popular image is one thing, but the contemporary coinage portraits,
Yeah.
they paint a much more politically conventional picture.
The coins show her with the prominent chin and aquiline nose characteristic of her Macedonian ancestors and her father. And when she minted coins alongside Antony, her profile often mirrored his strong features.
Which was an artistic convention used to signify political harmony between the ruling couple, right? Prioritizing power over aesthetics.
Exactly, and Plutarch, writing about her captivating presence, explicitly stated that her power lay in her personality, her wit, and her multilingual conversation skills, rather than traditional physical beauty. She was mesmerizing, yes, but intellectually and conversationally.
Beyond the coins, we have surviving Greco-Roman busts, like the famous Berlin Cleopatra and the Vatican Cleopatra, which feature those strong Macedonian features and the royal diadem.
And there's the tantalizing Pompeii fresco, which may depict her as Venus Genetrix with Caesarion as Cupid, mirroring the statue Caesar placed in Rome. It might have been walled up after Caesarion's execution, showing how quickly one had to erase loyalty to the defeated dynasty.
And finally, her modern legacy is just immense. Since the Victorian era, driven by Egyptomania, she has been a pop culture sensation, fueling novels, operas, Hollywood films.
The distortion began early. Medieval writers like Chaucer viewed her somewhat positively, but Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra truly cemented the image of the tragic, passionate lover for the early modern world.
And we can't forget the bizarre intellectual footnotes, like Alexander Pushkin popularizing the obscure claim that she prostituted herself to men who paid for sex with their lives.
A sensationalist detail utterly unsupported by mainstream history, yet it shows how eagerly any negative gossip was embraced to sensationalize her life.
And conversely, we have to remember her little-known intellectual legacy. Fragments of medical and cosmetic writings, remedies for baldness, recipes for dyeing hair, are attributed to her, preserved by figures like Galen.
It confirms she was more than a queen. She was a patron of science and potentially a scholar in her own right.
So, after this deep dive, the figure of Cleopatra VII that emerges is not a one-dimensional seductress at all, but a pragmatic, shrewd, and highly capable Hellenistic monarch.
She mobilized every single tool at her disposal: her administrative control of the state granaries, her command of nearly 10 languages, her sophisticated political propaganda like dressing as Isis, and her strategic alliances with Rome's most powerful men.
All to defend the independence of her kingdom against an impossible Roman tide.
She inherited crushing debt, she navigated treacherous civil wars, and she expertly played Julius Caesar and Mark Antony against each other, all while desperately trying to secure a viable sovereign future for her dynasty.
Her failures weren't personal or moral, they were simply political, driven by the fact that the Roman Republic was too vast, too hungry, and too powerful to be held back by one queen, no matter how brilliant.
The most surprising nuggets we're left with are her astounding linguistic skill, the sheer depth of the financial hole that defined her foreign policy from day one, and the massive, pervasive extent to which Octavian's relentless propaganda machine manufactured the enduring legend we still wrestle with today.
The queen who was too foreign, too ambitious, and too dangerous for Rome to tolerate.
And that leads us to a final, provocative thought for you to carry forward, tying together the narrative of propaganda and historical memory. While Octavian was quick to tear down all monuments and images of Mark Antony after the victory, he allowed Cleopatra's wealthy friend, Archibius, to pay the massive sum of 2,000 talents to preserve her gilded statue in the Temple of Venus Genetrix in Rome.
So, why leave the statue of the defeated queen standing right in the center of the man who defeated her?
By preserving her physical image, Octavian ensured that the icon of the wicked foreign queen he had triumphed over, the one guilty of witchcraft and trying to move the capital, remained a visible, permanent cautionary tale for the Roman populace. Her enduring presence, preserved at his decree, became a continuous, silent reinforcement of his own virtuous narrative.
The greatest propaganda victory wasn't destroying the enemy's image,
But harnessing it.
a lasting piece of calculated political theater standing right in the heart of Rome. That is a deep dive for the ages. Thank you for joining us on the deep dive.